Hey, so here's a question. When's the last time that you were in a perfectly good mood and then you picked up your phone and a minute later you weren't?
Absolutely. Look, you didn't read anything upsetting. Nobody said anything mean to you. You just saw what someone else happened to have.
Yeah, and now there's a voice in your head that it wasn't there 60 seconds ago. It's quiet. It's not dramatic, but it is there and it's
hmm
saying one thing. And what's that thing?
Yeah, you're way behind.
You're
Way
way
behind.
behind. So behind. Look, that voice is what today is about. Where it comes from, what it's actually made of, and most importantly, like what you should do with it.
And you know what? We're going to run the whole thing through coin. And fair warning, some of this gets a little uncomfortable because we're naming stuff most people just scroll past without stopping and thinking about it.
Yeah, we're gonna go straight at this, so let's do it.
This is the nature of everything. Don't stay stuck.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the nature of everything. I'm Bo.
And I'm Clint. And if you're new here, welcome. This is where we dig into personal development through COIN, our framework that stands for confirm it, own it, be intentional, and change the nature of everything.
And look, Coin started as kind of a way that Clint and I would work through our own crap. You know, just daily conversations that are going back decades now, full of what's going on in life, you know?
Yeah, and just so happens we're still standing. So, look, something's working.
Yeah, and we also wrote a book. Everything we talk about here on the podcast, plus some tools that you can put to work right away. You can grab it at thenatureofeverything.com.
Today's topic is one of the most universal human experiences ever seen. Something every single one of us, we do it. And we try not to, but we do it. And you know what? Probably multiple times a week. And almost nobody talks about what this really is. And they don't talk about it honestly.
Yeah, and that is comparing yourself to other people. You know, specifically what happens when somebody else has something that you want and what that quiet sting does to the way that you see your own life.
Sure. And it sounds simple. It is absolutely not simple.
No, it is not. Look, let's start with a reframe that I think changes the whole conversation before it starts. Alex Hormozy talks about like hard things that we experience, difficult emotions or difficulties in business. They're not bugs, they're features. And comparison is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, and that the way you frame that, it matters so much because the moment you start treating the comparison response as a malfunction, you're already at war with yourself. You're trying to fix something that actually is not broken.
Yeah, the mechanism works exactly like it's designed. The question is just what was it designed to do?
Hmm. Well, just so happens there's actual research. Uh,
Of course there is.
you know there is.
Please go ahead with the research.
Don't you worry. I got it. I brought it to the table. Oh, there's the ring. Okay, great. Don't use that. I hate it. But look, this goes back all the way to the 1950s. There's a social psychologist that developed what he called the social comparison theory. And the basic idea is that we have this built in drive to simply evaluate ourselves in relation to the people around us. And look, this is hardwired and it's not a character flaw. It's doing this itself.
So it's your brain doing your brain's job.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's doing its job. It's badly sometimes, but I mean, it's given it a try. Realistically, the problem isn't that we compare; it's what we do after this comparison fires off.
And here's the thing the further along we get in life, you know, I think something can shift. That voice that comes with the comparison, it gets louder and it gets more like permanent sounding, like it's building a case against you.
Well, I mean, yeah, because it is in its own way. It has receipts to go back and look through. It's building its own file for this.
Look, this is important. Comparison doesn't discriminate by your age. If you're 23, then maybe your roommate just, you know, landed a cool job and you kind of feel that feeling. Or, you know, if you're 53 and you have, you know, a buddy that just got to retire earlier than you,
Mm-hmm.
you feel it. It's
Yeah.
it's a human thing. It's not an age thing.
But to that end, this is another thing I want to throw out on the table before we get too far into this. Think about this. Colonel Sanders, KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Sanders. Dude was 62 years old when he franchised KFC. 62 years
62.
old.
That's
Yes.
impressive.
Yeah, 62. So, old dudes like drawing Social Security and building a global empire all at the same time.
The
So,
global chicken empire.
absolutely. Finger licking awesome, right? So, like, think about the fact. So, this voice that's in your head, like, it's telling you, like, you've missed your window. Well, it doesn't have to be good at math.
Yeah, the voice is not a reliable narrator for your life.
True.
And look, we're going to keep coming back to that. So, look, before we run this through Coin, I want to slow down on something because I think most of us are actually misidentifying what we're feeling in the first place. And if you misname the thing, you really can't work on it.
Absolutely. Brene Brown goes into this stuff a little bit deeper in Atlas of the Heart. And the whole premise is that naming our emotions correctly is one of the most powerful things that we can do. She found in her research that the average person can only identify about 3 emotions with any accuracy. And those 3 emotions are happy, sad, and angry. Which means, like, most of us, like, what we're actually feeling is floating around unnamed. And that's not the thing, like, unnamed things don't get lighter. Like, that doesn't get easier to carry. But those unnamed things, they continue to stay up and they're just taking more space up in your brain and in your emotional capacity.
Yeah, I think that goes back to that idea of thought soup that we've talked
Mm-hmm.
about.
Mm-hmm.
Just fragments of thoughts of ideas that just float around in your head, and you really don't get to give them the appropriate context and the appropriate attention. I mean, like, what are most of us actually feeling when we see what someone else has?
So envy is the word, not jealousy. And we use these words too often interchangeably, but they actually describe different experiences. Jealousy is about a threat to something that you already have. It's usually, relationship or somehow involves a third party. But that's not what's happening when you see like someone's vacation photos or that new badass car that they just drove up in.
So, I mean, what Brene would say is that what we're feeling then is envy.
Envy,
And
yes.
envy is simpler. It's just like I want that too.
Mm-hmm.
Two people, you and the person who has the thing. You want both of you to have it.
Exactly. And most of the time, it's not even that I want that and I don't want them to have it. That's not really the case. We're not, as humans, we're not necessarily villains in the story. We generally aren't wishing someone to be without, or we're definitely not wishing harm on others. Generally, that's not the case. We just also want, the boat or the lake house or the new car. We just want that too.
Yeah, we just want the lake house. That's
That's
it.
it.
No big deal. But look, here's why we never say that. Because envy has a reputation problem. It's one of those 7 sins.
Mm-hmm.
So, the 7 deadly sins.
Yes,
Oh, so
absolutely.
ominous. But look, calling something envy feels like a confession. I'm envious.
Yeah, absolutely. So instead, to your point, we say jealous instead because I'm so jealous of your vacation. That sounds more like a compliment. Like that's a cool vacation. I'm jealous of that. That's because it seems kind of casual, right? I
It
mean,
is funny. I mean, like, I'm consumed with envy over your kitchen remodel. I mean, that does sound like you need some supervision.
for sure. Which it's exactly Brene Brown's point. Like we reach for this socially safe word, and in doing so, we stay one step removed from what we're actually experiencing. And you can't coin something, and the way you said it, you can't coin something that you've mislabeled.
So,
And
I mean, step one, even before we get to the framework, it's just calling it what it is. It's to confirm it. It's to name it. You saw something someone else has, and you want it too, and that's envy. And you know what? That's okay. We can work with that.
all right, so C in coin is confirm it. And in the context of what we're talking about here of comparison, this step is deceptively hard because there is a significant amount of social shame baked into admitting this stuff. Like even privately, the reflex is to scroll past and say, oh, well, that's nice for them, and move on. But bullshit, because you didn't move on. You're still thinking about it. And you're thinking about it 3 hours later and the next day, or you're carrying this around while you're doing something completely unrelated. That's still churning around in your mind. That envy's still there.
Yeah, and look, confirmation, it's just always about getting honest down to that actual thing. Not just like, I felt a little weird seeing that house, but what's underneath it? Because here's what I have found in my own life, in my own practice. What you think you're envious of is almost never like the thing.
Hmm. What do you mean?
Like, is it the house? Or, is it what the house represents? Maybe it's, security or proof that things are going well or moving in the right direction, or, evidence that somebody made the right decisions and they're paying off. Because maybe you didn't make the right decisions. I don't know. But
Sure.
I mean, maybe I didn't. Because if it's the house, that's one conversation. But if it's, I want evidence that my life is on the right track, that's a completely different conversation and probably a more useful conversation.
Right? That's great point, because that's the confirmation that actually does move something. Not just naming the surface, but naming what's underneath that and what's moving underneath that surface. And again, there's no judgment in that process. I promise you, you're not a bad person for feeling envy. But you know what you are when you recognize it? You're honest. And that means something.
Yeah, I mean, confirmation is honesty without the punishment, without the shame.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the whole thing.
Absolutely. And to be able to confirm it allows you to move forward and own. Ownership is that next step where getting this stuff in place, it gets real, because owning it here means something more specific. It means you stop making the other person's life the problem, right? That's not the problem, that
Right.
person's doing
Yeah.
great. But the ownership piece of this is when you get to look honestly at at what you've gotten going for you, what your role is here.
And look, that's just really uncomfortable sometimes.
Can be, yeah.
Because, I mean, being quietly annoyed at somebody else's success is like so much more convenient than asking yourself, like, what role you've played and where you are.
Hmm.
God.
Yeah. Again, ownership is not about the blame, and it's not about shame. Ownership is about recognizing that you have agency over your own journey. You control all of your next steps. And in this context, owning it means running the gap through the three P's. Is this gap personal? Is this gap present? And is this gap pressing?
Yeah, look, this is one of my favorite coin tools. It's in the book. Check it out because it does something really elegant. It helps you figure out whether the gap you're feeling is actually yours to close.
Indeed. So, is this personal? Does this actually align with who you are and what you want from life? If someone got promoted into a role that you actually never wanted and you didn't give a shit about it, you still feel the sting. But why? Why would this be a personal thing for you? Because you didn't want that gig in the first place.
Love
Right?
it.
That really is worth sitting with and checking out. Like, is that gap real then? Because you're applying it to something that you didn't want.
That's
Is
just
this
too honest. I mean, it's not the same thing, right? To think that you wanted the promotion but you didn't want the job. Like it's really weird how we do that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and realistically, like a lot of that is just, your ego getting in the way, because those are two very different things. Another thing to consider, another P, is this present? Is this gap actually present? Is this showing up in your life right now, or are you projecting forward? Right? Are you stressing about that? Is this part of that 90 something percent of things that you're stressing and worried and anxious about that never actually comes to fruition? It never actually shows up in life. Because I really do think a lot of comparison anxiety is really just that, just looking into the future and seeing what you may not have, or like, I'm never going to have what they're going to have. Really? I mean, is that actually the present piece of this? Is that actually happening right now, or are you just trying to project this into the future and piss something off that doesn't actually exist?
Yeah, and you know that voice in our head? I mean,
Mm.
like that voice loves the future.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Doesn't it
the
though?
undefined, unrealistic, whatever. It loves the future. It
Mm-hmm.
has extremely detailed projections about everything that's never going to work out.
And it's so super accurate, so okay, the third P, is this gap pressing? Is it pressing at the moment? If it's personal and it's present, then how much does it actually matter? How much skin is in this game? What are the real consequences if this gap doesn't get closed?
And sometimes you run the three P's and you realize, like, yes, hey, this is
Mm-hmm.
real and it's
Mm-hmm.
mine to close and it's important.
Yep.
And look, that's uncomfortable, but it's actually a gift because now you know what you're working with.
Sure. And sometimes you run the three P's and you realize, wait, this isn't mine at all. I don't have to deal with this. Like, I just picked up someone else's measuring stick and I don't like it. So I'm going to throw that shit down. I don't
Yes,
want it.
please put it down.
Exactly. Because I think it's important that deciding something isn't yours, it's not your gap to deal with. That's just as powerful as deciding that something is, and really tackling that, because I believe being able to know that that's not yours and leaving it, that's ownership as well.
Yeah, and look, I know that we're really familiar with the coin framework and, kind of how we talk about things, but I mean, just in an effort to make this perfectly clear, it's just like sometimes you think you want something, and when you really ask yourself, you're like, I actually don't. I'm just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wish that maybe things were a little easier. I mean, it's just usually something else.
Right.
But look, when you do find that thing and you think, hey, this is important and I care about this, that's when we have to be intentional. This is where we actually do something. We take that comparison, and there are different paths. And which path you take depends entirely on what you learned when you decided to take your ownership there.
Well, for instance, like one path could be that the gap is real, it's personal, it's present, it's pressing, and something about what you saw confirmed a genuine distance between where you are now and where you eventually want to be. And the intentional response isn't to spiral and lose your mind and get overly stressed and anxious, or it's also not about overhauling your whole life overnight, because that's not realistic. But what it is about is finding that first move.
Yeah, and look, here's what I believe about feeling stuck. It's almost never about like the size of the gap. It's just about how hard it is to cover some distance, to make a move. When nothing's moving, everything can feel impossible. But then something kind of shifts and shakes loose. Even something small, and then like our whole attitude changes.
Sure. The whole experience changes through the smallest intentional act. Like you're saying, completely agree. Whether or not you're putting that conversation off for so long, and then now you're just like, okay, boom, I'm scheduling. Even if you schedule a conversation,
That's
be like,
so
hey,
good. Just
yeah,
just schedule it. Don't even have it
absolutely.
yet.
Just schedule it. Say this is when I'm going to do this. Or you know what? If you are struggling with the comparison stuff, like, write down what you actually want. Like, actually take the time to jot down what you truly want, not just what you assume because you saw like this flash in the pan of what they drove up in or their social media pics. Like, doesn't matter. Actually write down what you truly want, because that movement, that actual step changes how you feel about the gap of where you are and where you want to be, because now you're not just standing still anymore. You're making, that's that integral step forward of going, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. I can actually confirm, I can actually tell you what I truly want, not just what I got envious about because I saw it on social media.
Yeah, and look, just let me say this. You might just have time to improve things,
Sure.
significantly. I mean, you might even have time to completely change the game, but you don't have to know that today. You just have to take a step.
Sure. Even like you said, even a small one. So let's think about it. Another path, the gap isn't yours. Okay. So there's a piece of ownership in recognizing that the gap isn't yours to close across. So the three P's said that this is just simply noise in your head, right? And the intentional response is to actively choose your own lane, choose your own path, which it sounds pretty good, but it's probably a little bit harder than that. Than in a world that's, I mean, engineered to show you everyone else's like highlight reels on social media, and we're sitting here saying like, well, just choose choose your own path. And that's why I say I do think that we're talking about how the brain functions with all that. It is harder than it sounds when we're so steeped in everybody. It's their highlight reels, man. It just is.
Yeah, and look, that feed, that highlight reels feed, is not going away. The
Mm-mm.
promotions will not stop. People are going to keep buying, big fancy houses. And they're going to
Sure,
keep taking vacations and
sure.
drinking drinks with little umbrellas in them while you're having your morning coffee. I mean, look, being intentional is also about like what you consume.
That's
Maybe
right.
you need to put some of that on mute. Maybe you need to care a little bit more about what's coming in, right? And look, that's the opposite of weakness. That's strength. But it's
Sure.
also like stewardship practically to yourself.
And stewardship of your own gap map. And we talk about gap mapping quite a bit in the book. So because the more noise you let in, the harder it is to see clearly what's actually yours. To change the nature of everything is where we get to actually zoom out and see what shifts when you stop running someone else's race. In what we're talking about now, when you can mute some of that noise like you're talking about, Bo. That's brilliant. Like mute some of that noise and actually see what's going on when you aren't comparing and you're not trying to place all of that highlight reel in your own lap and say, okay, well, where am I not hitting the mark?
Yeah,
Now we
and
get to change that nature.
yeah, that's going to change everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you're measuring yourself like constantly against other people, you've got to know that your gap map is a complete freaking mess. Like half the things on that, I mean, they're not yours. Like you don't actually care about that. You're exhausted from work. I mean, you're working towards stuff that's not going anywhere because you don't care. And so think about it this way. Think about the cognitive side of this. Like, I get it. Here we go. I've got some research
Of
because
course.
uh, honk honk, ring ring. So there's research showing that constant social comparison actually pulls resources away from your own creative capacity.
Mm.
Like, let me say that again. The research shows that when you are constantly involved in this social comparison model, that takes away from your energies, it takes away from your resources and your reserves from being creative in the manner that is actually true to you and what you want. Your brain is so busy monitoring all of other people's crap, it loses the opportunity to be building towards what you truly want. It takes away from your creative energies to move in the direction that's authentic to you.
Yeah, so like you're literally operating at a reduced capacity because someone else's kitchen remodel is taking up real estate in your head.
Yeah, I mean, yes, essentially. But when you get clear on your authentic self, what you actually want, what truly matters to you, then your gap map gets clean and it gets focused and that noise drops away. And what you're left with are the gaps that you know are worth closing.
It's seriously worth recognizing. It's simple enough to be, on the Instagram and be like, I want a Lamborghini. I mean, Clint, I wouldn't even fit in a Lamborghini. I mean, like, what good would it do? I'm too tall for that
You
mess.
probably don't want the maintenance on the Lamborghini either.
No, but I mean, look, just knowing that, that's like collecting coins, the real ones, because you
Mm-hmm.
you learn. You're like, nah, don't actually want that, but I did want something, and that's what's yours.
Sure, absolutely, 100%. But and please understand, I have no idea what the maintenance is on the Lamborghini because just so happens I don't have one. I'm just
You
assuming
know
that
you should rent one and take some pictures so we can
that's
pop
gonna
it.
happen. So for all of you listening, at some point I am gonna post on social media like one of these badass influencers. I'm gonna be standing in front of some cool cars and big houses and stuff and be like, look, this is my, it's really not my stuff,
It's gonna make you so much prettier.
but we're gonna see how many clicks we can get off of that. Because to your point, like knowing what the real coins are, knowing what your real coin like economy and what your billfold looks like through reality, nobody can take that from you. Like someone else's promotion shouldn't touch what you're building. Keep in mind, someone else's highlight reel should never affect what your gap map is unless you look at that and go, okay, I want that too, but not through envy. I want that too because I know that I want to build that authentically for me.
Yeah, and look, that changes the nature of everything. Not necessarily like getting the thing, but like knowing which are the things that you actually want, taking that ownership. All right, so look, let's make this real. Let's walk through an actual scenario because this is where the framework stops being sort of abstract and it starts being something that we can use.
Set up your scenario then.
All right, so let's talk about Fake Fred. You
Oh,
know,
fake Fred. Okay.
we love Fake Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Fake Fred is 38 years old. He's been in his company for 6 years. He does really solid work. He feels pretty settled. And last week, one of his buddies that he started with, same time, similar role, they got promoted to director. And old Fake Fred, he found out through a company wide email. He didn't even get a heads up.
Oh, just right between the eyes, huh?
Yes, yes. And look, he spends the rest of the day distracted and he goes home quiet and his partner says, like, oh, baby Fred.
Baby fake Fred.
Baby Fred, what's wrong? And he says nothing. He's just tired. Nothing's wrong. I'm just tired. But in his head, he's in there hard, right?
Sure is. Sure is. So, okay. Well, then confirm it. Well, what is it that fake Fred actually needs to do then?
Well, he needs to stop saying nothing. I'm just tired.
Sure.
At least to himself. When he gets honest, maybe it's a mix of things. Maybe it's embarrassment.
Sure.
Maybe it's a flash of real anger or something, dramatic like that. But underneath all of it, something he's known for a while, but maybe it's something that he didn't want to say out loud.
What does he not want to say out loud?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what fake Fred's thinking. But
Well, tell me about fake Fred.
maybe he's just been coasting. Maybe
Okay.
he hadn't been working that hard. I don't know. Maybe he's been telling himself that, he would get a promotion eventually if he just kept showing up. And that email, it just confirmed that it didn't work that way.
Okay, so to your point, that really is that's a fair confirmation. That is applicable because I'm bummed that my coworker got promoted. Like that's not really what we don't feel that we're, unless you just don't like them because they got promoted like illicitly because they're a terrible employee. But if we do feel like, well, I feel like I'm passed over. I feel like, I've been playing it safe and I know it, but like that's a different thing. That's a different thing, realizing that you didn't hit it out of the park because you were scared to take the risk and you played it safe and you got looked over. Yeah. I mean, that's true. That's true confirmation. We can feel that. That's honesty.
Yeah, and look, it's hard, right? You said it's hard. It's hard because then you got to take ownership of that, and again, you can run it through the three P's: personal, present, pressing.
Personal. I get it. Fake Fred. Fake Fred actually wanted to grow in this scenario, and that isn't just ego. That I mean, Fake Fred put in the stuff, and maybe I didn't. That is kind of personal. Present. Yeah, yeah, it's present. I'm watching it happen right now. Like, or Fake Fred's actually watching it happen right now. Is it pressing? I mean, it's not like a crisis for Fake Fred, but if nothing changes and Fake Fred doesn't adjust the nature of things, another year goes by exactly the same way, and this gap doesn't change. It doesn't change for Fred.
So maybe this one is his. To own
Mm-hmm.
it, it means that he's gonna stop being quietly annoyed at his buddy, who really did nothing wrong, and he starts being honest with his own role and in where he is.
All right, so good point. So what's the intentionality piece of this? So what does Fake Fred do with this then?
Well, he doesn't overhaul his whole career on a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
He finds that first move. Maybe it's a conversation with his manager that he's been putting off, or maybe it's just getting clear on what the director track actually looks like. What does it require? And he's got to be honest with himself. Like, is he the guy for that job? I don't know. Maybe it's just writing down what he wants because he's been kind of having that thought suit. Maybe he thinks he wants it, but he doesn't want it. And look, I just want to bring this up real quick. I know that we've had similar conversations to that.
Sure.
It's like we secretly want something, but we didn't actually even really want it.
Sure, it didn't know what it meant having it in so many ways. To your point, like even in this scenario, you're talking about like you've been putting off a conversation. Again, just scheduling that conversation. Like again, that's that small movement that, Fake Fred gets to feel a bit of a change simply because now something truly is in motion, even by just scheduling the conversation.
Yeah, and old Fred, he went from like, why not me, to what do I need to do next? And that's the whole shift. That's a coin moment. So look, let's put a bookend on this thing. Like, here's what we covered today. Like, comparison, that's hardwired. It's a feature, it's not a bug. Like, the mechanism isn't broken, but it is pointing at something. The question is, like, what?
Sure. So name what you're actually feeling. Most of the time it's envy. It's not jealousy. And the difference matters because naming it correctly is where your actual power starts. That's when the agency of you gets to tag in. Envy is just, I want that too. And that's human. So it's fine to own that, and you should own it and run it through coin. Confirm what's underneath the surface. Like, know what that is. Own whether that gap is actually yours, and use the 3 Ps. Like, figure out whether this is yours or not to tackle, and be intentional. If it's not yours to tackle, then leave it. If it's not your gap, then don't bother with it. But if it is yours, and you know that it's authentically yours, then find that first step. Make that first move. Not the whole overhaul. Don't go nuts. Just make that first small integral step.
Look, and please remember that voice that I call the asshole, the voice, not a reliable narrator. You have way more runway than you think.
A man built a global fried chicken empire at 62. All right? Again, it's never too late. It's just not too late.
Yeah, so look, your coin question for the week, for the weekend, I guess, and look, sit with this. Like, whose measuring stick are you using? And what would it look like if you set down that one and you just picked up your own?
Yeah, just think about that. And also, look, if something landed today, something that you liked, what you heard, something that stirred up something, maybe it even pissed you off a little bit, and you want to vent about it, we're in. Like, share that. Let somebody in your life know about what we're doing here, and come join us on the socials and all the stuff. Like, come find us.
Yeah, and where you can find us, thenatureofeverything.com, or you can search The Nature of Everything on the socials. And look, grab the book.
And as always, don't stay stuck.
So we'll see you next week.
Before you go, just know it's time. Time to connect. Time to change the nature of everything. Find us at thenatureofeverything.com and don't stay stuck.